Some people walk through life like the world owes them a stage. They don't talk, they perform. Every gesture is bigger than it needs to be, every laugh louder, every word sharpened so it cuts whoever's weakest in the room. To them, cruelty isn't ugly, it's entertainment. That afternoon, 4 men decided their audience would be a homeless girl sitting outside a brick diner. The diner itself was nothing special. A faded neon sign buzzed weakly in the window, struggling against the sunlight. The air smelled of grease and coffee grounds. A cracked booth inside had been stitched up with duct tape. People walked past without noticing it most days, the kind of place that wasn't built to be remembered. But that's the thing about stories. Sometimes the most forgettable places end up holding the moments no one forgets. The girl sat by the wall just beyond the door, her knees tucked in, her back pressed against the bricks like she was bracing herself against the world. Her clothes were worn to threads, jeans frayed at the edges, shoes with soles separating from their bodies. She clutched a paper cup, not begging with it, not shaking it in people's faces, just holding it, waiting, quiet. When someone finally looked down, she spoke in the softest voice, so quiet that half the world would have missed it. "Could I just have some water?" That was it, not money, not food, not miracles, just water. The men who stopped weren't the kind who heard a plea and thought of kindness. They were the kind who smelled weakness and thought of sport. They looked at each other and grinned like jackals circling meat. "Water," one barked, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "What's next, sweetheart? You want us to buy you lunch too?" The girl didn't flinch, didn't meet his eyes. Her fingers tightened around the paper cup, though. Another man twisted the cap off his own bottle, tilting it in front of her. "Here, maybe if you beg louder, we'll let you lick the lid." Laughter erupted. It wasn't the kind of laughter you'd hear in a bar or around a campfire. It was sharp, hollow, echoing in the alley like the sound of glass breaking, the kind of laugh that's meant to hurt. The third one crouched down close, invading her space until she shrank against the wall. His breath reeked of cheap beer even in daylight. "Say please," he sneered. "Make us laugh. Go on, beg like you mean it." The fourth just watched, smirking, feeding off the others. There's always one like that in a pack, not the loudest, not the cruelest, just the one who fuels the fire with silence and smirks. Sometimes those are the most dangerous of all. She closed her eyes. She'd learned a long time ago that sometimes silence was her only weapon. If she didn't respond, maybe they'd get bored. Maybe they'd move on. Maybe. But not today. Because today someone else had heard. Inside the diner, a man had been finishing his coffee. He sat in the back booth, as he always did, back to the wall where no one could sneak up behind him. His plate was simple: eggs over easy bacon, toast that he hadn't touched. He ate like someone who wasn't there for food, just fuel, just habit. Jasonstatham. He wasn't a man who looked for trouble, but trouble had a habit of walking into the same room he was in, and when it showed its teeth, Jason never ignored it. He saw them through the window first, 4 men circling, laughing, pointing. He heard the sound too, laughter so sharp it pierced through the diner's weak hum of forks and low conversation. His jaw tightened. He lifted his coffee, took one slow sip, and set the cup down with precision. That little gesture, calm and deliberate, was the kind that always came before a storm. He stood, dropped a few bills on the counter, and walked out. The bell above the diner door jingled as he stepped onto the sidewalk. The sun hit his shaved head, casting a shadow across the pavement. And as he walked closer, the scene unfolded in full. The girl pressed against the wall, her cup trembling in her hands. The men, laughing like hyenas, circling her, feeding off each other's cruelty. Jason's steps slowed, his eyes narrowed. He didn't storm in, didn't shout. That wasn't his way. He let his silence announce him first. The men didn't notice at first. Their laughter filled the street, drowning out everything else. But the girl noticed. She opened her eyes, and for the first time that day, she didn't look at the men in front of her. She looked past them, over their shoulders, and her expression changed, not relief, not yet, but something like it. A shadow fell over the bullies. One of them turned, smirk already half formed. It froze when he saw who was standing behind him. Jasonstatham didn't need to say a word. His presence was enough. His face was stone, his eyes cold, and every muscle in his body looked like it had been carved for a single purpose: to end moments exactly like this one. The tallest of the bullies broke the silence first, though his voice cracked just slightly. "What's this then? You her babysitter?" Jason didn't answer right away. He studied them like a surgeon studies a patient before cutting. Then, in a voice low and steady, he said, "She asked for water." The men exchanged glances, confused. "Yeah, so what?" one sneered. Jason stepped closer, not fast, not aggressive, just close enough that they could feel the weight of him, smell the steel in the air. "So you're going to give it to her, and then you're going to walk away." Arrogance dies slow. One of them tried to laugh it off, forcing bravado back into his voice. "Or what?" Jason's eyes didn't blink. His voice dropped lower, calm as ice. "Or I'll make sure the next drink you get comes through a straw." The girl's cup rattled softly in her hands. The men froze, caught between pride and something colder creeping into their spines. The tallest one puffed his chest, refusing to give in. "You think you can scare us?" Jason tilted his head, studying him like a problem already solved. "I don't think," he said softly. "I know." For a moment, no one moved. The street itself seemed to hold its breath. The girl stayed pressed against the wall, eyes darting between the men and the stranger who had stepped into her storm. And in that silence, something shifted. Because bullies always think they own the script. Until Jasonstatham walks in and rewrites the ending. The tallest bully was still grinning, but it was a nervous grin now, the kind of smirk a man wears when his brain is screaming retreat but his pride is chaining him in place. His buddies chuckled behind him, but their laughter was thin, broken, already unsure. Jason didn't move fast. He didn't need to. He let the silence drag, each second turning the air heavier. His eyes never left the tallest one. When Jason looked at a man like that, it wasn't just a stare, it was a verdict waiting to be carried out. The bully tried again. "Mate, you don't know who you're messing with." Jason stepped forward, close enough now that their chests nearly touched. His voice was low, steady, the kind of tone men didn't forget once they'd heard it. "I don't need to know who you are," Jason said. "I can already see what you are." The words landed like a slap. The bully's jaw tightened, his smirk gone. His hand shot out, shoving Jason in the chest. The move had weight behind it, but Jason didn't budge. Not an inch. His boots might as well have been nailed to the pavement. Jason glanced down at the hand still pressing against his chest, then back up at the man's face. The corner of Jason's mouth twitched, not a smile, not even close, more like a warning. "You just made a mistake," Jason said softly. And then it happened. Jason's fist moved so fast it looked like the air itself snapped. One punch. A short, brutal hammer that landed square in the bully's gut. The sound wasn't a thud, it was a crack, air rushing out of lungs, pride collapsing with ribs. The man folded instantly, crumpling forward, coughing, gagging, gasping for breath that wouldn't come. He staggered backward, clutching his stomach, his bravado leaking out of him faster than the air in his lungs. The other three froze. For half a heartbeat they hesitated, and then, like cowards always do, they tried to attack as a pack. The first one lunged from the side, swinging wild. Jason stepped in, caught the punch midair, twisted the wrist until the man screamed, and used the momentum to slam him face first into the brick wall. The crack of skull against stone silenced his scream in an instant. He slid down to the pavement, groaning. The second came from the back, wrapping his arms around Jason in a sloppy attempt at a bear hug. Jason's elbow shot backward, crushing the man's nose in a spray of blood. The grip loosened. Jason spun, caught him by the jacket, and hurled him across the pavement like he was throwing out garbage. The man tumbled, coughing, blood staining his shirt. The third one froze. He wasn't brave, not really. His laughter had always been the kind that comes from safety in numbers, but now those numbers were broken, scattered across the pavement. Still, fear and pride battled inside him, and pride lost. He swung anyway. Jason sidestepped, clean, precise. And then his knee came up hard, slamming into the man's ribs. The sound was sickening, like branches snapping in a storm. The bully screamed, collapsed to his knees, and Jason's fist followed, a clean right hook that sent him sprawling on the sidewalk. It was over in seconds. 4 men who had strutted like kings were now sprawled across the concrete, groaning, broken, stripped of every ounce of their arrogance. The street that had been full of cruel laughter was now choked with silence. Jason stood above them, calm, steady, breathing barely changed. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't even angry anymore. He looked down at them the way a man looks at broken glass, useless, dangerous only if left where someone else might step on it. The girl still sat against the wall, clutching her cup, wide-eyed. For a moment she didn't move, as if she wasn't sure if this was real or some cruel trick. Jason crouched down, lowering himself to her level, his voice soft in a way that surprised her. "You asked for water," he said. She nodded slowly, still trembling. Jason reached into his jacket, pulled out a full bottle unopened. He pressed it gently into her hands. "Here." Her fingers shook as she took it. She whispered, "Thank you," her voice hoarse, like she hadn't said those words in a long time. Jason nodded once, then stood again. He turned his gaze back to the men sprawled on the pavement. One of them, the leader, was still coughing, trying to push himself up. Jason walked over, crouched low, and grabbed a fistful of the man's shirt. He yanked him close until their foreheads nearly touched. "You remember her," Jason growled. "You remember her face, because the next time you laugh at her or anyone like her, I'll be there. And it won't be your stomach I break, it'll be your jaw, do you understand?" The man nodded frantically, too winded to speak. Jason let him drop, his head smacking the concrete with a dull thud. The other three kept their eyes down, broken dogs too scared to whimper. Jason didn't bother with them. He'd already said enough. He turned back to the girl. She had opened the bottle, sipping carefully like it was the finest thing she'd ever held. Tears streaked down her dirt-stained cheeks, but her eyes weren't on the bottle anymore. They were on him. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. Jason adjusted his jacket, glancing once more at the groaning heap of men on the ground. His answer was simple: because no one else did. He didn't wait for thanks, didn't wait for applause. That wasn't his way. He gave her a final nod, then walked off down the street, boots striking the pavement with the rhythm of a man who never lingered where the work was already finished. Behind him, the men lay broken. Behind him, the girl held water in her hands for the first time all day. Behind him, a story began to spread, not about four bullies who laughed at a homeless girl, but about the stranger who silenced them with his fists and left without a name. And that's the thing about Jasonstatham. He doesn't just step into stories, he rewrites them. That day, everything changed.